All right. So I was looking at different ideas here. I'd also been looking at uh, the convenience store and stuff like that I was talking about last time. But I think that just maybe doing a parking lot is going to be a better idea for my project, because like it's going to be you're going to want people to look at the vehicle and the smoke coming out of the tire or the back of the car. So just having it like the composition with less distractions or whatever. I think even doing just one of these parking lots at night that doesn't have too much other areas for your eyes to look at. So I don't know if I pulled any specific ones, but some of these that was like a bit foggy, I think is where I'm gonna start heading in this direction. Like something like this was really cool to me because it's like a very graphic noir type of composition or environment. So you just have a lot of freedom with your lights and like all that stuff. So we'll hop back into the scene and try out some of that stuff. Yeah, it was also Isaac's stream yesterday. Got me thinking about more of this like atmosphere and fog and stuff. So yeah, we'll go back. Need to retrieve this from the archives. Let me pull it out here. All right, I think I found it. So yeah, we can do could just blast off another render just to see where we ended or where we're picking up from. So I think this is actually a different camera than I was rendering from, but even this one here is pretty cool. So I think camera 5 was where I started from. So we did this tire track nonsense. I think it was last Sunday, 1 week ago. It was 1 week ago. I don't remember the exact date. You sure I've seen this one? Let's take a look. Yeah, I think I have to go into, maybe it's camera 4. Yeah, this one I definitely saw recently. Super cool. He did a really nice job with the shader for the ground. But yeah, I was thinking like for myself, like just having these other lights, and then you don't really need this because your focal point or your point of interest is the vehicle that's spinning around. But yeah, even taking something like this and kind of replacing this with your vehicle would be a good way to go. But yeah, I'm just not too good of a generalist that even building out this, like he's just put so much work into the ground of everything that like I'm just doing a grid with, I don't think it's even displaced, it's just a bump map, but the amount of detail just in his like asphalt, the different paving regions, and then the little bits of litter and like all that stuff is just amazing. And then I think his wetness shader is definitely a higher level than mine. I feel like a good amount of it as well is I don't know what you guys think, but I feel like a good amount is like a bit of a paint over in Photoshop. Like, I don't know, it depends on people's workflows. Some people will do it all with like Octane or whatever. Maybe he's in Blender, so he was using the Blender compositor. But a lot of people doing that kind of like stills will pull stuff into Photoshop and do like a final paint over with, they'll have the lights split out maybe into different layers or stuff like that, and then you can really push stuff. There's like a Learn Squared class about matte painting. I need to go through it again, or I don't know if I've ever watched the whole thing, but it's kind of legendary with like just the amount of improvements you can get with working in Photoshop or Post or whatever. But yeah, it's always hard to know because like you're just looking at stills versus animation and stuff like that. It looks like this one is animating, so that he might be showing his complete process here. Pretty cool to see. The scene with the needles is classic. I think it's like 8 or 9 years old or something like that. I remember seeing that when I was in college. It was like super inspirational. It was like I was using Mantra at the time, and I think he did it in Cycles maybe, or he might have been doing Octane at that time. But it was so yeah, these little vignettes and flares, all this stuff. It looks like he's just dropping it in Photoshop. So yeah, that's a good kind of flexibility you have. One thing. Oh, he did that recently. Someone did a needles maybe that just looked somewhat familiar to it then. There was like in Cycles, someone did a needle that was dropping and bouncing and stuff like that. That I think that I'm thinking of. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to find it. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it very quickly. But yeah, just using Photoshop and or whatever compositor you're using, Nuke, all that stuff, you can do like image projections and things like that to use images and like put them into your final pretty quickly. I was thinking about that kind of thing with this shot, and you could even take like advertisements and images of convenience stores and put them as a constant shader on like grids, and just kind of billboard them in your scene that way. Like it's just a backdrop or a matte painting that you're like assigning to a grid. But I think for this project, I'm just going to try to keep it a little bit more minimal, and yeah, just going a little bit closer to this kind of thing like he has with these parking lot lights. There was the, try to go back to it here. I'm already getting a mess. But yeah, something like this is pretty interesting. Let me try to go back to, yeah, this one for sure. So yeah, we'll try to head in that direction for today. I feel like you can just work very creatively with this lights with volumes and build out like interesting depth without having to make a complete environment or stuff like that. So we'll try to get started with that. So I'm just gonna go through now and kind of go through my lights and reorganize things a little bit. So I was already staying somewhat organized, like all of these lights over here belong with the car. And then these lights over here were more scene lights or environment lights and stuff like that. This one right here, I put in at the end as my cool light, the cool zone light, just to see what it would look like with different color palettes and different color temperatures and stuff like that. Yeah, the ArtStation people are super talented with matte painting and all that stuff. I need to figure out more of that capabilities. I feel like it's a really valuable skill to have. So yeah, this one, I might just turn it off for now. And I was just using that to test out, seeing what different like color palettes and things look like. So yeah, we could just move these maybe up here if we're not using them anymore. This one, let's see what it was doing. Oh, this, so this one was, I'm using it to visualize the volumes. This is my Houdini light. So it's not a redshift light. And then on my redshift wrap, under objects, I have that set to excluded. So it's just for viewport visualization and stuff like that. Could name this a little bit more clear if you want. So if you really want to like work with the smoke, the redshift lights are usually like overexposed. One thing you can do with redshift lights is disable them in the viewport, and then you could just do it that way. But it starts to, when you build that out too much, it starts to get a little complicated because you're basically building like a lighting setup for your viewport and a lighting setup for the renderer. But I just use the Houdini light as a way when I'm setting up my smoke simulations to see shadows and a bit of shape. So this one here looks like my kind of rim light right here that's hitting the road nicely, and everything else. So it looks like without that light, the scene here is pretty dark. So we'll just maybe call this like rim. And these other ones here, it looks like they're not, maybe the exposure and stuff like that is low enough that they're not really being used. Looks like maybe this one's hitting right there from a different camera angle and stuff. I might have been using it. I'll just put it over here. Sometimes I'll disable this is like showing the wireframe in the viewport. If I turn it off, sometimes I'll also just turn off the visualization. Like that's what I did with this HDRI dome light. And then this one, it's not on as well. So you could turn that one off and just put it over here. And this one as well. So we're a little bit more organized. We have all the vehicle lighting, fancy stuff happening over here. And yeah, these are the tail lights. This is like a geometry light, mesh light. Give some suggestion for generating nice VDB collision of the car body. It seems like the file Kieran did for the volume is a bit thicker. Yeah, I did it a little bit with this stream early on. I guess I never, I don't know if I've shared this file. I'm a little bit behind on keeping organized with that stuff. Bismarck28, how's it going? We're doing pretty good. Just in the cozy zone today, doing some reworking the lighting and stuff like that for this scene. But yeah, I could touch on that pretty quickly. Yeah, the voxel size will always make it pretty slow. For like complete accuracy, you can always set your pop collision to surfaces, and that will be pretty slow, but it would be the most accurate. So let me just turn off the other objects. So this is what I did real quickly for the I'll just go into the headlight. So this is what I was doing for this car collision. I didn't care that much about accuracy, so I just hid the tires. When you bring in Alembics, they'll come in as packed Alembics typically, depending on how you import them with the node, but the default is to bring them in as packed Alembics, which is like a reference to the file on disk. It's not like actually loading the geometry into your scene. So if you want to edit the mesh and have access to the points and vertices and stuff like that, you can just do convert. So this is converting from any type. If you want to explicitly say, you could do like maybe packed geometry or something, but by default, this will just convert anything to polygons. Thank you, Bismarck. Yeah, it's coming along. It's been like a pretty big push. I don't know, this is like the 6th or 7th stream. We've been tweaking, doing improvements and stuff, but it's been cool to do like a longer, more all-encompassing project or whatever. So yeah, then I'm just doing the scatter to basically put as many points as I can on the surface. If you have complex geometry like this that's not watertight, you just put as many points as you can on the surface and then do VDB from particles. And right here, I made everything pretty puffy and pretty big to kind of fill out the air gaps. So I did erosion and some smoothing to shrink it back down after that. And if we look at, let me just switch between these two flags. So if we look at the two silhouettes, we're not too far off. You might be able to get a little bit closer with some erosion and stuff like that. But for VDB, this is generally the best you can kind of do, I would say, for vehicles and pretty complex stuff. You can go like lower in the voxel size and stuff, but it starts to get pretty difficult. If you're good at modeling, like you could go in and remodel the vehicle to enclose it so that it is watertight. You can also do this like shrink wrap node, and this will just make it into a convex hole, so it's not as good. One idea you can do is if you just remesh, you add detail or like subdivisions back to this, and then if you ray the stuff back onto the surface, like reproject it, we might need to do reverse. Then you'll get like a little bit closer with some parts. Some issues here, you might need like more resolution or something. But if it depends what you're doing. If you're doing rain, you might want stuff like a little bit more accurate, but see, we have some issues and stuff. Might want to do minimum distance. Sometimes that works a little bit better than the projection. So this might be a starting point. Like you could do this and then make some modeling tweaks if you need to on the other areas. But like doing this method, you have a surface that's pretty close. So as the drips roll down, they might follow the things as much. Skadooks, deconvex. I haven't tried that one. You're talking about convex decomposition? I haven't used this. I don't know. This might be pretty slow. But yeah, like there is some post tricks and stuff you can do. Like as long as you get the raindrops rolling and looking close enough, you should be okay. I don't know. I need to take some time to look at this convex decomposition. But a good amount of it too is like just planning things overall. Shrink wrap each piece in a for each loop. Yeah, that could be a good idea. So another aspect of it as well is just planning out your shots and stuff like that. Umair, no worries. We're still winding up a little bit. Yeah, just do it once and export the geometry. So another aspect of it is like if you're planning shots, like if you want a detail shot of rain coming down and collecting in this area, then you can eliminate other parts of the scene and the geometry. Generally, like if you're going to be working from this distance, you can get away with the way that the vehicle treats, like interacts with the car. You won't notice it because the drips are so small. You just want like the specular highlights. So a lot of it as well is just like the planning of the shot. Like you would use completely different approaches for different camera angles and stuff like that. Like if you did a super close up here with the interesting text objects may appear larger than they are or whatever, and you wanted just some drips running down, like you would just use a grid and kind of build this out separately. You could even move the stuff around and everything like that. So yeah, a part of it is like, depending on the different camera distances and stuff, you might need to build out a few different setups. With effects, a lot of times this one setup for a certain camera view isn't going to work for then punching in and getting the macro shots and stuff like that. So I'm not sure because I haven't seen the complete like breakdown of the different shots and stuff you're trying to get, but if you have like one here with the camera right here and you want to see like rain hitting this and rolling down, I would build that out a bit separately. Yeah, you could break it down. You could use there's different ways to like delete stuff based off of the camera, but you could also just do it by hand. But yeah, I find with detail shots and stuff like that, instead of just trying to work globally and like crank resolutions, just rethinking things. Like you could kind of start with your setup, but you just kind of need to optimize it again and stuff like that. So it's like the same idea with oceans and all that stuff. If you're doing whitewater, this is like your boat and the camera's this far away, you just need a few particles and maybe like 100 particles, and they're filling this area. And as you punch in, then you could make like 1,000,000 particles, but you just concentrate them in this area. It's like you're just going to break the computer or fill up the memory if you're trying to do like 1 billion particles, and it takes a lot of practice and stuff like that to think about things that way. But you just need to always optimize your stuff for really close cameras and macro shots to get the amount of detail and stuff that you need. But yeah, the one for each primitive, like that was a pretty interesting idea, as these are all packed alembics. If you just do for each primitive, then you can run this for each loop over the different pieces. You might want to do it maybe based off of like connectivity, but we could just try this and see what happens. It looks like I probably need to do a convert inside of this. So this gets you a little bit more accurate convex surfaces because it's treating each piece separately. You could do connectivity as well. So we'll just do convert outside of this loop and assign this to a primitive attribute of class. And then instead of looping over each primitive, I'll just do it based off of the primitive attribute of class and see what that gives us. So it started to figure out these areas as well. So that's another way to get things, you're a bit closer to where you need to be for collision geometry. I think there's always a little bit of like hand modeling or hand finessing. If you have time, you could play around with this convex decomposition. Seems like it could be promising as well. But yeah, it's making collision. Connectivity is just looking at 3D connectivity. If I press 9 in the view, I have to be in select mode, and then you press 9 in the viewport. If you look at this gear, you could do 3D connectivity selections. So based off of the mesh, the 3D connectivity, you can see this is visualizing different colors for different like islands. Basically the island is like 3D connected points or primitives or faces. So connectivity is just baking that into an attribute. So instead of assigning a random color to each 3D connected geometry, it will give it a unique class attribute. So like all of these faces, through whatever, are all just the 178th connected piece of geometry. Yeah, so it's pretty cool to pare things down and stuff like that. But yeah, there's like, depending on a lot of different things that can happen with the model you're given, there's like a lot of different issues you run into with creating collision geometry. With RBD, it could be like a complete masterclass by itself. It's just like making buildings ready for destruction, and because you need to do certain things to prepare them and all that stuff. And for different solvers, it changes as well. Yeah, you could retopo the whole car and all that stuff, but there generally is some tricks you can do in Houdini to get you like 90% of the way, and then hopefully you'll just have less work to do by hand at the very end. We'll just get out of this 3D connectivity. Maybe if I just go out of that mode, it will turn it off. But yeah, we'll get back to the scene. So we turned off all the lights except for the car light. And I'm still in headlight mode right now, so that's why this smoke and everything appears a bit flat. When that class is coming up, consider you signed up. Yes, I don't know. I am planning, maybe we'll do some classes coming up with like a sign up or a regular scheduled group of people or something. Or just a long form tutorial that's like a masterclass format or something. It's just like a deep dive. I find the masterclass term a bit like presumptuous. That inherently defines you as the master. So what we'll do is, yeah, the destruction it gets very technical very quickly. So it's a pretty big like topic to try to get into, and just the way Houdini has it set up now with packed primitives and packed RBD and all that stuff, like it just gets very confusing very quickly for someone getting into Houdini for the first time, or even if you're a year or 2 years in, there's a lot of issues you can run into. So yeah, let's maybe turn our main rim light back on. Turn our renderer back on. And might change the color of that. What I'm gonna do is play around with the global fog. So if we want to turn this into some of these other references and stuff I was starting to pull, this redshift global, the volume scattering tab, this just treats it like there's infinite fog in your scene. And then if you have volume contribution turned on with your lights, it will illuminate the fog. And then this settings here, you can just control. Scattering is like how bright it will be. Attenuation will basically start to obscure the light as your light goes through more medium, more space. It will just dim the light, like it's there's things, little particles, or I don't know, thickness to the fog that's absorbing the light. I might go into this color, getting a little too futuristic, too cyberpunk with that pink. I was just gonna pull it back to something a little bit more neutral. I don't know, this kind of could be pretty cool here with the very monochromatic color scheme. Like if we want to really control the focal point and the point of interest, like having the vehicle being the only thing with saturation could be a cool idea. Like the Frank Miller Sin City stuff or whatever, where it's like the start of that trend where you just make one part of your image red or something like that. The rest is monochromatic. And another thing, yeah, redshift is pretty impressive with fog. I was looking at Isaac's stream and he was saying that with Octane it was like super slow, and when he switched over it was it really quickly. Yeah, it does look like the Z depth kind of pass. There's some interesting work. I think it was like this one guy, Kim Lofton. He was taking the maps from Grand Theft Auto and just rendering them as like Z depth only. But yeah, it gives you like a really foggy kind of look. You wouldn't get the volumetric kind of stuff like we're trying to get just with Z depth. But if you are just trying to get this like interesting kind of thing, yeah, you could fake it with Z depth and get yourself pretty far. And then with game engines, they can do interesting stuff with like the Z buffer, like blurring it iteratively or stuff like that. So that's how they can get some of that like atmospherics. But yeah, Z depth, really good for just any kind of atmospheric effect. You can get change the contrast based off of the camera depth and desaturate. Basically, like any painting you look at, they will. These are a bit too. Some people are cranking the settings in their posts and stuff like that. But some of the more classical paintings, they will decontrast and desaturate things as they get further from the viewer or from the painter. And then depending on the time of day and stuff, it will just generally tint to blue or a different color. So you can drive all of those stuff like programmatically with the Z depth pass and get cool results. But yeah, I think because I'm interested in these cones and the beams, the shafts of light, try to set them up with this. Is there any other option of copy to point node variant attribute for Houdini 16.5? I think with Houdini 18 they added support for that variant attribute or the capability to do that. You might be stuck. It's a bit slower. You just have to build it out with like a for each loop, or you could do it with copy to points. There's older tutorials and stuff like that, but it's more complicated to set it up that way. So that's why with my grain tutorial, I set it up using the variant, because it's just less nodes and less attributes you need to manage and stuff like that. How to have the connectivity node lines to be straight or not curved. Yeah, so if you go into a network, I think it's just Shift S. But you can also change them in the network editor. And yeah, I think whoever saves the file in whichever way, it will be like baked into the Houdini file. But if you just do Shift S, you can change them. I'm usually using these straight lines just because I think it's a bit easier, like things won't get overlapping as much. It doesn't look as pleasing aesthetically, but I prefer to work that way because it's just clearer for me to see the lines and what they're connecting to, instead of like this branching stuff is just too confusing for me to look at. Lose the burnout details by using the fog. I believe I will be losing some details, but that's just part of like kind of the environment or stuff. Like kind of hiding or leaving some of it to its imagination. I'm gonna try to see what I can do to keep as many of the details as I can, like depending on the lighting and stuff like that. I think we're gonna try to make sure we preserve the details as much as we can. But yeah, generally with fog, like it will muddy up your scene quite a bit, so it's can cause issues. But yeah, so we'll just go back to this rim light. So this is an area light. Usually if you switch it to spotlight, then you'll start to see you have more controls. Cone angle, you can get more of the beams of like focus light. So looking at this parking lot here, you can see we have these very cones. That's like the cone angle on the spotlight. There's also an older tutorial, or a stream rather, that I did that was talking about, I had like these drones flying around that were doing these lights. But yeah, so you could do it with a cone angle. You can see we're narrowing it down, and now we get this really sharp, dramatic like looking cone of light. Might go into just this world, kind of zoom out from the camera here and move the light around, so just to visualize things a little bit easier. So like moving it down, probably moving it closer, and then you can start to see the tip of it, kind of like we're in the parking lot or whatever. So as we get closer to it, then we probably want to widen up this cone angle. We're getting again closer to the something of like a street light or a traffic light or something like that. So I'm probably going to want to build this out somewhat realistically. Like if I continue working from just placing stuff in the view, looking at like this, my other cameras and stuff won't make a ton of sense. So what we're probably going to want to do is just take a quick look here. So if we have this vehicle here, these spotlights are quite tall. Yeah, you could do a noise through the light. So with Redshift, it's also possible to do, you can assign a shader to the fog. So you could take a look at that if we want to pretty quickly. So you can see here they have the tint shader. So if I just do a material network, you could keep it here if you want, because it relates to the renderer, or like you're going to be using it just for that. So it just keeps things somewhat organized. So I think if you just do could maybe just try the max on noise. I'm not sure if this is all you need, but we could try it. You might need to put it into a volume shader. So we could just do a relative reference here. So yeah, and then you have your 3D noise here that's breaking up the fog a little bit. I think you can probably do the max on noises as well, like these are a bit fancier. So maybe the overall scale, going higher. This works a little bit unexpected, like compared to other noises, but I believe the bigger your scale is here, the lower the frequency of the noise. So like you make it really big and then you have a low frequency. You should start to get a lower frequency pattern. The 3D noises in fog, it's always a bit weird because you're like looking through the 3D noise. So it stacks up a bit oddly, usually. So yeah, like even if you go up to 35, 75. Eventually you should start to see less like overlapping. I might need to just refresh this to update it. But yeah, you can do this to get some interesting like breakup of your 3D volume. So you just have some more organic or natural bits of stuff. I'm just gonna turn this off for right now. So I'm still setting up the scene. I don't want like another feature. I just want to work and make sure I'm setting things up like as expected before I add more bells and whistles to the setup. Yeah, so we're looking back here. It looks like these lights are maybe this and this vehicle and this light here is the same distance from the camera together. So I'm gonna say that my traffic lights or the parking lot lights should be maybe 8 like car heights on top of each other. We don't need to be super precise, but just making sure we're working in the somewhat real world scale is usually a good idea. So we could rotate this so it's more downward facing. First day of school tomorrow, so I'm gonna go to bed. Thanks for hanging out and stopping by. Good luck with the start of the semester. Yeah, and then our camera's over here if we wanted to like hit more of this fog and move it over. But yeah, it looks like generally we're not high enough right now with this light. We'll take it over here, maybe like 7. So these units, these are in meters. If you did want to, you could type in like parking light dimensions. You might need to find these LED stuff are more futuristic. This one looks like it has some schematics. So it's saying this is 10.65 feet, I'm guessing, off of the ground. I'm not sure about that. Those measurements seem a bit suspicious. So this one's saying 20 feet, 18.3 feet. Yeah, so if you just do 18.3 feet in meters, this is saying you should be like 5.5. So we could do that. It depends a lot, like there's different manufacturers and different styles. You have a bit of freedom and stuff like that. And then this rotation, I'm just gonna zero this stuff out. We back at a weird angle. But I just want to make sure I'm doing like a straight down light without any other directional angles or stuff like that. OCD hits when I look at the tire mark on the asphalt. Large bumper, different roughness. Yeah, I still need to do a bit of shader editing and stuff like that with my network. Like the wetness isn't 100% dialed in, and yeah, having some bump or like some different smudges, maybe even the anisotropy or something could be an interesting way to treat that. But yeah, I'm kind of waiting to really dial stuff in until like we figure out more stuff about the lighting, because it will otherwise you might be doing too much work that you're not going to be enjoying or visually experiencing later on. So let's keep playing around with this light. Might want to go down the exposure. And yeah, we could play different spreads here. So maybe if we do a wider spread and then move it like further in front of everything. I guess having one, when we get it too close to the between the camera and the smoke, it looked like we were losing a ton of detail with the lighting and stuff. Andrei Lebrov. Yeah, there's, I feel like some really nice vehicles are being rendered out of Octane. The other guy, Jesus Suarez, he has some really nice automotive shaders and stuff like that. And then Ash Thorpe, I think he's been working with a few other artists and stuff like that, but he's been rendering out some really cool vehicles. This stuff is, I think he actually took pictures of it. But yeah, he has this one vehicle that he's been putting in different designs and lighting setups and stuff like that. But yeah, I think this is all Octane that he's using. So yeah, I was changing the fall off angle here. This is like the harshness of the light. And one of the things I was doing during, yeah, all those guys are just complete legends. They just crank out so much work so quickly. So yeah, this fall off angle is like relates to like penumbra umbra, or the it's like the gradient between on and off for the light, essentially. Yeah, I saw a lot of Ash Thorpe's like Tokyo photography and stuff like that. Just has an amazing eye for like the lines, like compositionally, and like just like a graphic designer laying out the perspective and everything just to really hold your attention. BBT Griff, thank you for the tier 1. I appreciate it. So we're moving along here with the setup, just trying to find some good environment lighting going on. I think having these a bit wider could be cool. One thing I'm going to do is go into my camera 5, is what the one we're looking through. I'm just going to go to a wider angle lens. It's like 25 millimeter, and just reboot the scene. For whatever reason, when you type in numbers on the camera with Redshift, it doesn't update in real time. You either have to move, like nudge the camera around, or just refresh the renderer. But yeah, we have that one in there. I'm being throttled. The hell is going on? There it is. Yeah, these details, the asphalt and everything is amazing. Some of these I was looking through, some of these people are like blending different approaches, it looked like this animation here. It looks like they're combining CG with real world photography and doing compositing and stuff like that. I don't remember if it was this one. Put this in the chat if you guys want to examine that more closely. I forget where it was. Might have been this other one I was looking at. Yeah, so you can see their like reflective cards that they're putting in, or that might just be shadows or bounce. Maybe it was the other one. Maybe it was at the end of this video. I'm not sure, it might have been maybe just looking at this. But yeah, combining and like painting in, yeah, this animation here shows that they're the different breakdowns or whatever. Julian, always late. Yeah, we're always, this project is like behind schedule producer wise and everything like that. But yeah, you can see here all the different layers and lighting setups and stuff like that they're compositing. It seems like sometimes they do this, some lights to show the body, and then they only have it applied, like when it pops on, you can see it's not affecting the environment. So when you really get into this like cosmetic branding client work and stuff, they really want to show off the form of the car. Like they'll get really specific and then you just start to solo things out, and deadlines are always extended. So they'll start to mask things and break reality or whatever to get like the nice like Rembrandt painting-esque kind of composition and stuff. HDRI Light Studio. Yeah, I've seen some really good work and stuff come out of that. Good luck doing it with Octane. Yeah, I saw you're talking about Isaac's stream. He was saying how Octane was so slow with volumes and fog and everything. For print, we render out separate lights. Yeah, I mean, all that stuff, even traditional photographers will work, like they have setups where it goes through all the different lights and takes the pictures for different lights, and it will like mechanically, electrically like turn things on and off. Yeah, I'll investigate this. This looks pretty powerful. I'm just using the free one. But yeah, if you look at YouTube tutorials and stuff like that, like a lot of these cosmetic stuff is, I've seen different breakdowns, and like they'll have a spotlight just punched in at the bristles of like a makeup application brush or something like that, and that's all that they'll be using it for, is just to make the bristles of the brush like a little bit brighter. So even these product photos and stuff like that, even though they look absurdly simple, like the photographer might actually be using like 20 lights and stuff like that on the set. There's a lag. I don't know if there's a lag for sometimes if you refresh Twitch, the lag will go away. Yeah, I think people are still working people are still doing this kind of product photography, like especially this stuff. It's very difficult to get this water looking this good with CG, with all the different ripples and stuff like that. Like this one here, it looks a little bit more doctored and photoed, messed around and stuff. But to get the refractions and all the little bits of stuff looking completely real, a lot of this stuff is still, they'll do some weird tricks like here to make it. This is probably just kit bashed with real world photography, just stacking. Yeah, they'll get really specific too and start painting like different tendrils from other elements, and get really this is just one picture and it's for a billboard or whatever, so they get really just really over the top dialed in and stuff with it. But Yeah, I don't know if I can I don't know where I could find one of these setups, but like seeing the breakdown of some of these is, if you search and research and stuff enough, you'll see that they're adding in like maybe 20 different little things just to highlight really specific aspects of the product. Whether it's putting like a black strip of paper here to make this part like grab your attention or something like that. Like all this work, just they put so much thought and energy and stuff like that into it. I don't know if I've heard of this guy. There's some slow-mo photographers and stuff like that I follow. So it's cool to see just the amount of time and stuff that they put in. Yeah, I think I guess this is a slow-mo breakdown. This robotic, like robots is a really specialty area. Yeah, Alejandro's gotten really good surface tension results and stuff like that. He's doing that looked like a tire burnout for a second. Yeah, the 15 to 20 photographs is a normal thing. So basically they have the lights set up with different electrical circuits, or I don't know the actual terminology, but basically in quick succession, one light will turn on, the camera will take a picture, another light will turn on, the camera will take a picture. So it's the same idea working in CG, where you have different AOVs and stuff for your lights. Everything could be done in Houdini, but he does it in real life. Yeah, I mean, part of it is like there's still a lot of people doing a lot of things practically with effects and all that, just because like the ink macro, like you either need a really talented Houdini artist or you can just shoot it and you'll get like all the details and stuff like that for free. But either way, you're going into like breaking the barriers of physics or doing things like that, where you're innovating, like whether it's real world photographic techniques or CG technical features or stuff. Let's take a look at this one. We'll get back to the scene setup after this. Yeah, so if you lock off the camera, for this one we made the splash in CG. Yeah, so you can probably warp, like spline warp this and everything like that. You could get pretty close with good good results, but there's just so much little intricacies and stuff like that you can get if you shoot things practically. Like seeing the little ripples, like the capillary ripples or whatever, I don't think you can ever get that with these little sub ripples or whatever like that. Like it's always super hard to get that kind of stuff with the CG solvers. There's always just little details in real life that whenever you take a picture, or do a render versus a picture, it always just looks slightly too smooth or stuff like that. You drink that beer, knockout. Yeah, there's people sculpting splashes. It can be a good approach, just because you're able to art direct and sculpt the form and stuff so well. But yeah, even like it's kind of like looking at a fractal. Like there's always a little bit more another layer of details or stuff like that that helps these photographs look real. And then as soon as you don't see that information, it just becomes too smooth or CG or whatever. So it's always a bit of a fight doing stuff with render and simulation and all that. So yeah, we'll get back to this. So what I want to do is we're gonna not worry about the reflectivity of the pavement. The water shader is pretty bad right now. I'm gonna focus a bit more on this lighting and try to get back to some of these images. So you can see some of these, there's like more intensity that rolls off as you get further from the light. That can be due either to the atmosphere, or also there's like, yeah, the IES profiles. The big issue with IES profiles is some of them aren't calibrated properly, and when the renderer does the multiple importance sampling, it kind of breaks that, and it doesn't know like to sample the noisy area of the IES enough. So you'll always just have like a bit of noise in the IES lights. You could find some that are calibrated or work better, but can be a little bit limiting just because there's no way to kind of interactively edit. Like, it would be nicer if they had ramps and stuff like that. With the Mantra lighting, they have a nice, you can do this attenuation ramp multiplier. So you can actually go in and even change color or whatever over the distance from the light. So Redshift doesn't have that option. I don't think, unless they added it. Yeah, you're just locked into the different equations. So yeah, one thing you can do though is people will combine multiple lights. So like this one, maybe I'll go down one more stop, exposure, and just gonna take a second to rename this. We'll just do like parking light. Getting my grammar's all messed up. Parking lot light. We'll just call this like main 01 or something. So we'll make a copy of this, and this one we'll call this 401. Then I'll just start the renderer again. So we have these two lights stacked, so they'll just be twice as bright. But if I take one of these and maybe go back to the crisper, more contrasty fall off, and then reduce the cone angle, then we're kind of like somewhat recreating the IES idea a little bit. And then you can also, with the volume contribution, start to split these out and work a little bit differently. So like, all this stuff is not really physically accurate, but sometimes you just have to work this way to get like a better, more art directable result. But yeah, this is maybe my fall off is a little bit too strong on that one. So if you want some extra detail or just extra bits of stuff happening in the light, you can do it that way. We could try going with the IES and see what happens. So with Redshift, you need to use a separate light for them. It's just the RS light IES. I'll just take the transform and copy it over. I think So the IES, you can get some interesting shapes and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, volumes will give you nice breakups, but sometimes even with this, you want to see the different like details of the light. We'll put one in and see what it looks like. So I have a bunch of random ones. I think RenderMan, they distribute some on their documentation. You see the thumbnail of kind of what it should look like. So you would see the different results and stuff like that it produces. Yeah, we'll give this one a try. So I turned these other lights off, so we should only be seeing the IES one. But yeah, it just depends, like the volume will give you a way to break things up, but these IES, like you'll always just get a different, you can see here this one's kind of hiding the beam component of it, but it's just showing it on the ground. All of these ones seem to be a pretty widespread. I guess I have to turn on the volume contribution. So it looks like all of this stuff is just super exposed. You just have an additional ability to really like sculpt and define the way that things look. Yeah, more of a geometric, like patterned breakup. Like flashlights or stuff like that. Sometimes the art director or you're just looking for a very specific look. Like even this is looking a little bit better than I was getting just by hand. I think these RenderMan ones that they distribute, like I trust the calibration of them a lot more. Like I was saying earlier, some of them are made improperly and it will break like the multiple importance sampling of the render when you use them. So that's why certain ones you'll see will produce a lot more noise in certain areas of them. And as well, you could even like stack the IES lights. It will get pretty expensive with the render, but if you want to, if you're really trying to get a very specific look, you could stack them. This Bullard one looks pretty interesting. So yeah, it's just like you would never be able to get this symmetrical breakup if you just had noise or stuff in the shader with the fog. So it's just seeing what tools, what capabilities you have. So we could do a snapshot of this, turn it off, and turn on the main thing. Maybe the spread, I want to try to get closer to that. Whoops. Changing the wrong parameters here. So you can usually get somewhat close to the same results, but you never really be able to match them. If you can, I would say to work with spotlights primarily, unless you really need to use the IES light. I might try layering some stuff here to see what happens. Leave that where it was. So I'll try putting the IES light back in, and then I'm going to look for a more narrow one. This one's, it's got like a directional component built into it or something. top post that might be built for like a lamp post or something like that. So it just depends how you want to work. I might do is I'm gonna keep playing around with these. Go back, make this wider, and try to find one that's even more focused. The star focused. So this is that noise issue. Let's see if it's how long it's gonna take. This one doesn't look like it's too bad to resolve it. So like I was saying, I think these RenderMan ones are a little bit more trustworthy because they're getting kind of sanctified or distributed by people actually making a render engine. Sometimes the ones on just passed around on random blogs and stuff like that can be a little just like maybe they're not normalized or they're not calibrated properly, so that the renderer just has too much trouble resolving all of the noise and stuff in certain areas. So we're not exactly where these images are, but I don't know if we want to stray too much from them. Maybe I might just leave that in there as kind of like a hint of light, and then maybe just start with something like this. Don't forget to hydrate. This is the hydration nation. That's a good PSA. Another one is to take a break from working and clear all the cups and other plates and stuff like that from your desk. I usually do a good job of it, but sometimes if you're trying to hit a deadline or working on a project, your desk is just covered in like empty tea glasses and coffee cups and stuff like that. So yeah, what I might do now is just like duplicate these and move them around, like we're making another spotlight position. One thing we can do is if we just copy this translate parameter, revert it to defaults, and then use a null, paste those values back. So now you could have like a controller for these lights. Just revert the IES back to its default. So now I can just basically parent these lights and move them around with one parent locator or null. I'm gonna get rid of this picture there. I don't know, sometimes I feel like the redshift has trouble getting your updates. I have the SOP level updates, but maybe the object transforms or stuff, has some issues with that, it seems like. But yeah, as we start to put more in, it looks like this. The wide view is just getting a little bit too intense. So let's try to put some in that will show off the smoke a little bit better. So maybe I'll just turn off the first one for right now. Let me see if this, maybe it just takes, it's like a little bit of a delay or something like that for it to update. This looks like we're starting to get some interesting details and stuff like that with it. I'm gonna get rid of the earlier ones and just make a copy of those. I don't know. We'll try putting them close together. See if that gives us, because like basically you'd see two. I guess some of these are just one beam. These ones are close enough together. We could try it like looks like this, the first one I had in, I don't know. It's like it was delayed and it moved away or something. Seems like sometimes with Redshift you just need to like give it a nudge if it doesn't update. How long the final scene would take to render? Do you think it's insane to have all these lights in? I mean, I think I was rendering some frames and seeing how long they took. It. I don't think it's like absurdly bad. Let's try putting one pretty far off in the distance up here. Maybe if we build out like a kind of arc composition or something like that. So vegan nuts, we will add maybe a couple more of these, and then we'll do a bucket render benchmark and see where we're at. So something like this, I don't know, starting to just spread things out too much. All right, so we'll try something like this with the bucket render. So I'll just go back here and take a look at my setup, just to make sure I'm not like overriding the resolution. So it looks like I'm doing a pretty high resolution. It's probably like I forget what I was doing. It might be 1920, and then I think the width is a little more anamorphic. Then we're doing the automatic sampling, and we're noise threshold right here is like 0.0125. So I think that's pretty good for video, like. But if you're doing stills, you might want to make that noise threshold even lower. I might quickly just try out some different settings here. Skadooks was talking about earlier about making sure we're not losing too much detail, because this is the start of this effect was to make this stuff looking good. So you can also like increase. Might be a bit too much. You could increase the scattering. So this right now we're only changing the environment fog overall. The other option you can do is if we go back to our shaders, if you increase like the scatter coefficient, this becomes a little bit brighter. We're going to be breaking stuff a little bit, but like this is kind of how I would start to manage that kind of stuff, is like you kind of have controls. You have too many controls. It's like, because you can control volume contribution, all that stuff, but kind of just keeping an eye on this and making sure we're not hiding it too much. I think this scattering here is a bit too. So we'll just give this a try. I punched out my camera a little bit. I went back to that wide angle just to visualize stuff when I was setting up the headlights or the parking lot lights. We might punch in again. Looking pretty slow. So this is just using the GTX 8000, just the one GPU. I'm guessing it might be 10 or 20 minutes for a frame, but I'm not sure. I'm gonna fill up my water. Wait for this to go a few more frames out. So yeah, it looks like that this noise here is still having some trouble. The geometry light and then the smoke that's coming right out of it. Some people have been mentioning that automatic sampling, they've been having some issues with it or running into some problems, so it might be related to that. how to export an alpha channel, like the object and its shadow. I'm just gonna stop this for right now. I might do another one with a higher noise threshold. So if I was to do like a test animation or something, sometimes I'll really boost this. I'm not too sure with the redshift stuff. You might want to try this like matte shadow material. Sometimes you can bash out what you need with it. If the AOVs don't have all the options you need. But I think in general with the redshift AOVs, it's not as flexible as Mantra. Like Mantra, you can really go in and you have complete control over the depth of the bits for each AOV, the sampler, and like export vex attributes, so you have complete control with Mantra, but redshift's a little bit more limiting. So I'm going to turn off the automatic sampling. I increased the noise threshold. I might just go up to like 1024. I think the other thing that Isaac was mentioning in his stream is that he was rendering at like maybe 720p or something like that, and doing some scaling in After Effects, and then like adding some film grain on top or something. Sometimes it's hard to see some pixelation from upresing, like upscaling. So I have a tremendous amount of noise in my renderer, but this is, like I was saying, for an animation or something like that, you might be able to work this quickly, like just to see how the smoke is reacting and stuff like that. And someone in Discord was mentioning that the redshift, maybe in mplay it doesn't show the time, but like if you use the render view, it will always at the end of the render show you how long it took. You're getting 53 seconds with this one. You might be able to push this stuff a little bit further. Let's do a snapshot. And see how long this one takes. So like if you're using the redshift render view, I like to use it because you have the post effects, the click to focus, and then this, even your previous renders, like it does a good job of. This one was the IPR one, so it's not as reliable, but you can keep track of times and stuff like that. So yeah, it looks like just with all the different light sources and volumes and stuff like that, it's pretty slow. These lights right here is really hard for it to sample. Yeah, I mean, I've probably never seen another renderer do all these lights this quickly, but even for working like at the speed I like to work at, it's a bit slow to be rendering images and have them take this long. But you might be able to, if you have more GPUs or you just have more time on your hands, it shouldn't be too bad. So let's see how this. So we might be closer to like 3 or 4 minutes with this frame. Then we just need to add depth of field, make everything even slower. So yeah, that one was just 1.5 minutes. Yeah, you could do the I'm not doing any denoising, but you could add the Altus or Optics denoiser. I have had some issues with those in the past, like ruining my animation or whatever. So I tend not to turn those on for rendering, but that is another option to do. I think for locked off cameras and stuff too, they can be a bit better. It wasn't really flickering, it was just weird. Like over time, it was just a weird motion artifacts. I was rendering particles with them, with depth of field and some other stuff like that. Do the depth of field after. Yeah, that's a good idea to, if you just do it with the Z depth pass or something. But yeah, it was a weird result with particles with motion blur and depth of field, and then when you played it, it just looked unnatural. Like the motion, it was somewhat similar to like watching a JPEG, like compression artifacts in a movie or something like that. Not that exact same thing, but just unnatural motion. But yeah, so we went down to 0.05. Yeah, I think generally like the road stuff needs some work. Just got it playing in the background. You're doing your Maya GUI? Yeah, so the wetness shader and all that stuff is a bit, needs some work, like the bump map, everything like that is a little bit, still a bit rough right now. So I'm just trying to focus on the lighting stuff today. But yeah, it is we have a myriad of issues. So what I'm gonna do is go back to the lighting setup. I think these spreads are a bit too. You created a better cover for V-Ray? Who did? The one that the reference that I was looking at? So I'm trying to turn off some of these. I don't know, it's the simulation looks good, but the lighting and everything in their scene was definitely a bit better. So maybe these spotlights, just keeping them a little bit more dramatic. You could always add few tweaks. Yeah, so the other thing was just having some kind of global light source, so that's how we ended up with like the two-tone things before. Might try something like that. Maybe this will just be like an ambient kind of light. So instead of having a cone, narrow cone angle, you go a bit bigger with it, change the fall off, and ready for the next feature. So just bring the intensity of this one down and just get rid of the saturation and then move it into the warmer territory. So that was one thing I did notice in that V-Ray render they were doing. They had some kind of ambient lights. Maybe they were floodlights or something from like nearby. It was like a racetrack. That was one thing that they did that made stuff look a little bit better. And then for the smoke here, we're able to kind of show it off or punch it up a little bit. But this is like an ambient light. Another thing we could do is just switch this back to area. The HDRI might ruin the fog. It depends. So with the HDRI as well, you have volume contribution that you can turn on and off if you need it. Let's see what happens. Usually with these volumes, to really make them stand out, like you start to light them from the side or the back, and you can define more of their form. Light right here almost might also be a bit too big. But yeah, I could do the HDRI and play around with it. This is a bit haunting now. It's like someone's lurking. Another driver is approaching. Manhattan neon lights HDRI. Yeah, I think I was playing around with it a little bit with the car, just to give it some extra stuff to like reflect. And I was starting to get some pretty nice results with it, but it was like somewhat contaminating just the entire environment a little bit too much. Like it was just muddying things up, or it was also adding a lot of time to the render, which I think is why I disabled it for right now. But we can toss it in and see what happens. So I'm just gonna move this thing, dim it down, so we don't notice like the actual source of the light too much. Just want something just this ambient kind of gradient. Tokyo Drift style. So yeah, I think lining this one, like I had some interesting lights. It was hitting the car and the pavement before. I don't know if I can get back to it. I think that's what I'm getting right here with it. Maybe we just need to go a bit lower. Yeah, that's so originally I had that rim light that was bringing stuff in pretty well. Like it was hitting across the hood of it. I can always go back to that scene if I'm really having trouble like recreating it. But yeah, I think that kind of stuff was helping a lot, like add some interest with the vehicle, and then help show like you direct your eye because it was hitting the pavement as well. I think I went too low with it. But yeah, it was hitting kind of something like that, and like the way that it was reflecting off the pavement and everything was pretty nice. Could always maybe just go a bit higher. My transform is not It's not helping me out today. All right. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get it working that well. I might just leave it something like this for right now. It's not super realistic with the sources of our light, but just for making the composition and stuff interesting, I might. So I'm gonna turn off the other I was thinking about turning off the other parking lot light. Maybe I'll just leave it like this for right now. But yeah, so we had the light dome, and having that in with the volume contribution, it kind of does ruin the fog. Like, you could play around with the gamma maybe, and crunch it the other. I was doing the gamma to flatten out the image to try to get a lot of like reflections from it, but maybe blasting the gamma to just try to pull out the highlights, and you can do something, but you either would want to like maybe not have it contribute to the volume. It's always going to be a bit odd just because it's going to be like a lighting up everything. But yeah, it's possible you'd want to solo this like we were looking at with the breakdowns. Like if you just only have that HDRI lighting up the vehicle, maybe yeah, could get something a little bit more realistic. I don't have Maya on the Linux stuff here. I think I have a like trial or something on my laptop, but I don't use it too often. But yeah, I think the HDRI does help like just add a touch of realism, especially if we get the pavement and stuff looking better. So if I just do a snapshot and turn that off. Some of these lines and stuff like that, I think it helps it. It might be. I don't have too much interest in trying to move everything into Maya. They do have some good stuff with the render layers and everything like that, but I don't know if I would be completely lost trying to do that. You can do different stuff with Redshift to split out the passes and everything, and then they have takes here. I don't really use them, but they're a similar idea to the render layers that Maya has. So if you want to do this for different lights and stuff, you can set that up. But yeah, I mean, I'm still trying to figure out generally what type of environment and lighting and stuff before I would go into like more of a like splitting out passes and post-production or compositing side of things. Any Mel scripters in the chat? Yeah, I've used Maya on Linux before, but yeah, I mean, I don't even have any of the I don't have any V-Ray licenses for personal use or stuff like that. But yeah, I'm more comfortable with Redshift only inside of Houdini. I guess ideally, like if you really knew it well enough, going into Octane with Cinema, you could probably get really good results because there's like really good resources and car shaders and stuff like that available. But yeah, I mean, I have some other stuff to play around with. The where did it go? This texture could be pretty cool to get things looking a little bit better, more realistic. And then my water shader and the way that I'm doing the tire tracks and stuff like that needs some work. And then just overall, I haven't really done like a breakdown of the different shots and stuff that I want. But yeah, I might try just like rendering this out as an animation and see what happens. But it might be getting close to it for me for today. Not too much progress with this, it's still just kind of figuring out what to do with it, but some interesting ideas with the volumetric lighting and stuff like that. One last thing we'll actually do is just put the shader back, the volumetric shader back in, and see what kind of stuff it gives us with that variation. So this was what we were just getting, and then I'll pump it again. So it looks like I'm getting some 3D noise that's like blocking out that swath of light right there. Using Mel, use Python. He might be in a class that's some of the older scripting classes and stuff like that are still teaching Mel. So yeah, if we reduce the scale of the noise, I don't know, sometimes it seems like I have to refresh it to get the noise frequency updates and stuff like that. You don't think it's getting applied on the... Oh, you're right. Something happened. Maybe I have too many floating windows or something like that. So let's just do this. Copy it. All right. Now we're back at it. Now we see it. Yeah, it was a bit weird how it was not updating or not working. So yeah, you just get some interesting different areas. You might want to play around with maybe making the vertical stuff really stretch out that way, so that you just have different shafts of different layers of depth. Like if you squish it vertically, I don't know, it kind of looks too much like a cloud or sky or something like that. Like if you're thinking this is just different mists, different layers of mist and stuff like that, probably makes more sense to stretch that out vertically. Then I don't know too much. Maybe trying different noises. Yeah, take it easy. I'll keep plugging away for a little bit. I'm getting close to ending it as well. But have a good night. It's at 4 a.m. Midnight hours. Grab some sleep before morning working. Grab some beer before you go to sleep. So yeah, just, I don't know, you get a little bit of interesting breakup and stuff like that. Yeah, I was thinking, like, I have so many stuff queued up that I'm trying to render right now. But yeah, I might do it just with lower settings. So yeah, hopefully the next time I pick this up, I'll have an animation of this rendered out, or a quick video. The other thing, I want to go back to camera 5. So I think I was closer to like 45 or 50 millimeter lens. I was working the other way because I was like just wanting to set up my environment and making sure it made sense. But the original frame and thumbnail, I was thinking it might go a little bit punched out. Sometimes you just have to reset it. Wife will kick you out if you come back with beer. Sunday beers. So yeah, I don't know, I might need to redo a little bit of the composition, but I think this is, to have this stuff in more of the frame is a little bit better. Might want to get this guy a bit closer. But yeah, I'll plan to do an animation of this shot, just to see what we get with everything in motion. Yeah, I don't know what's happening with these geometry lights. I might need to turn, I think I really boosted the volume contribution on them because they weren't showing up that much, but I think I need to turn it down. These lights got the J.J. Abrams just booming this flare right in our face. But yeah, I think with these tail lights, just reducing the volume contribution should. This is like kind of what I was talking about with the IES lights. Like that, the contribution of them is sometimes not ramped properly. So it's just super intense in areas close to the light, and you'll get noise that just takes forever, is impossible to resolve. But this area of the screen here was feeling pretty nice, kind of keeping a bit of the shadowing and shape and stuff like that within the smoke is super nice to get in a foggy environment like this. But yeah, it's somewhat of a success. small steps. Got 20 portions of this stream just focusing on little details. The one last week was pretty fun to do the tire track setup and stuff like that. But yeah, this area here I was thinking is pretty cool. So let's see what we get here. There's gonna be, these red lights are a spell a cast. I think they're a little magical. Two or 3 minutes pretty much for still a good amount of noise. I think if I change the setting there, the time for the noise threshold we have right now should get a little bit better. But yeah, there's some other things I need to look into with the textures of the asphalt, but moving in the right direction. So I'll do a render of this, like a quick low sampling kind of animation, maybe even just 720p or something like that. So it will render, will just take a couple hours for me to render. Yeah, so this area right here I think turned out pretty well. But yeah, we'll do it, see what it looks like in motion, just to really be able to tell. But yeah, this is probably going to be it for today. Just a little bit cozier. Just watch me fumbling around with lights and making some small, subtle improvements. But thanks for everyone hanging out. All the advice and links and stuff like that. I'm excited to try out that the asphalt shader. This is a pretty good price as well. 1.5 euro. This is the euro or Canadian. But yeah, we'll be back Wednesday. Maybe I'll post the animation of this to Discord if you guys want to check it out in the meantime. But yeah, I hope you have a good start of the week. Get the weekend beers going. If it's not 4 a.m. and if your wife isn't gonna kick you out of the house, crack one. Yeah, take it easy.